Well, there were some very moving scenes in New York this morning, our time, as the city mourned those who lost their lives in the 9/11 attacks 20 years ago. President George W. Bush addressed the nation, struggling to make sense of the loss of 3,000 lives.
20 years ago, we all found in different ways, in different places, but all at the same moment, that our lives would be changed forever.
Not wrong. The families, too, who were left behind, they had a chance to deliver their own tributes.
My uncle, firefighter Christopher Michael Mazzillo. I know you're with us every day watching over us, and even though I never met you in person, I still miss you a lot.
10 Australians lost their lives in those attacks that were targeted on the Twin Towers, and there was a ceremony today too in which both the American and Australian flags were raised. But because of those brazen attacks by Al-Qaeda suicide operatives, from that very day, Western nations, such as our own, moved at a rapid pace to prepare themselves for similar acts of terror. In Australia, then ASIO Director-General Richardson went about doubling the size of the organisation and began tracking down all suspected Australian Islamic extremists right around the world. He's also had to lobby government and opposition MPs in an attempt to introduce bold counter-terrorism laws to deal with planned acts of terror. But following the withdrawal from Afghanistan, is Australia adequately prepared for further acts of terror? The former ASIO boss joins me now from Canberra. Dennis Richardson, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
I want to take you back a year before 9/11. You knew then that Osama bin Laden was a serious threat, right?
Well, that was very clear because Al-Qaeda had been responsible for the terrorist attacks in East Africa in '98. They'd been responsible for the attack on the USS Cole in 2000. And bin Laden had issued a fatwa in respect to the United States, declaring it a legitimate target.
Did you know before the attacks or even since whether anyone in a spy agency around the world had conceived the idea of hijacking multiple planes and running them in to some of the tallest buildings in a capital city anywhere in the world?
I'm not aware of anyone. There might have been someone tucked away, but I doubt it. The focus of Western intelligence was on the vulnerability of Western interests in third countries, where it was considered that the security might not be as tight as what it would be, say, in the United States.
As this happened to the Twin Towers, you got a phone call. You were in bed at the time. You were told to turn on the television. Did you know instantly what had just occurred?
No, when I turned on the TV initially, there was speculation that it might have been a bomb inside the building or it was a small aircraft. However, it soon became clear, particularly with the second aircraft going in, that it was a terrorist attack.
Even to someone like you with years running defence departments and the security department in this country, were you genuinely shocked about what they did?
I wasn't shocked. I was surprised. In a situation like that, you simply do what you've got to do. And a lot of people in ASIO and in other organisations at both federal and state level did just that.
What were your missions then? What did you have to do very quickly and comprehensively to get on top of what would have been and has turned out to be a series of terror attacks around the world and even on our own shores?
Well, first of all, we did make some mistakes. All organisations and individuals do. That night, after the second plane went in, I phoned the Attorney-General, Darrell Williams, who was then in Perth. I then went into the office along with a lot of other people, had meetings, made a few telephone calls and the like, was there throughout the evening, met with the acting Prime Minister, John Anderson, around about 7 a.m. in the morning. We had a telephone hookup with John Howard, who was in the US, and there was then a special meeting of the National Security Committee. There were three big tasks for ASIO immediately. First of all, the US was concerned that there could be imminent other attacks. Therefore, we immediately monitored the small number of Australians who we knew had been in Afghanistan. We cast the net more widely, and we sought to track down Australians throughout the world who had trained with terrorist organisations. And that took us from the equator to actually inside the Arctic Circle in Norway.
Right across the globe.
We went to every continent but Antarctica. The other thing, of course, we had to do, the organisation was then only about 500, 550 strong. We went from a 9 to 5 operation to a 24/7 operation. We had to grow the organisation relatively quickly. We doubled in size almost in about 4 years. And the other thing we had to do, counter-terrorism moved from the periphery of public policy to the centre. That meant there was a lot more interest from the community, from the media, from the parliament and from the government. So the accountability was a lot more intense, and ASIO had to learn with other organisations to work together cooperatively at both the federal and state level because of the intensity of the demands on our jobs.
Couple of quick questions. With the exodus from Afghanistan, are we back where we were in 2001 in terms of fearing genuinely acts of terror?
I don't think we're back to where we were. I think, if you look at it broadly, security globally is tighter than what it was in 2001. We are obviously vulnerable to lone wolf attacks, as we've seen in Australia, and we can't rule out more bigger organised terrorist attacks, as we've seen in Paris.
And this is the other factor that we really have difficulty fighting, is the online brainwashing from places like Afghanistan. It doesn't necessarily mean to be solely Afghanistan, but from terror groups around the world now, to try and get them to come on board and conduct acts of terror as lone wolves or partial lone wolves in countries like Australia.
Yeah, that is certainly a challenge, Chris, but ASIO today is a well-resourced and a very professional organisation. The Australian Federal Police, the state police forces, they're all in a very different position to what they were 20 years ago.
That is reassuring. On behalf of our viewership, thank you so much for all your hard work you've done over many, many years, not just with ASIO, on behalf of keeping us safe. Thank you.
Chris, can I just say one thing? I was the public face of ASIO, but they were over 500 people then, today almost 2,000, whose names are not known to the public. They're the people who did the work, and they continue to live in the community today, and for the most part, their neighbours don't even know what they did at that time, and they're the people who should be thanked.
Yeah, you've done that. Certainly worthy of thanking too. Fascinating job. Dennis Richardson, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, Chris.